My name is Paul Lee. I first entered the war in 1854 when Britain saw that they needed more support. We were brought into this war for a cause that wasn't ours. We all thought it wouldn't last long, maybe around 12 weeks, but we were wrong. It lasted 3 years.
I remember one day, I was at my station, rifle in hand. That's when I noticed, out of the sheer disorganization of our forces, an Ottoman run directly into enemy lines, where he was shot by 2 Russians. I tried to help him, being myself. However, I was too late.
You fool!
I killed them both, and they fell flat to their faces. That's when I walked and noticed his deceased corpse. I then looked at his rifle, and I realized how weak, fragile, and inaccurate it was compared to ours. That's when I started to contemplate the role that we truly played in this war. And I started to realize that this wasn't our cause. This wasn't our war. We were brought in for nothing.
You fool! William Cleveland is alive.
Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Whoa, that movie was so cool. It really reminded me of a book I read. All Quiet on the Western Front, I think. The Crimean War was a battle between the Russians and the Ottomans in 1853. However, it was extended to the British and the French because of the fact that the British and the French didn't want the Russians to have influence over the Ottomans' territory, especially, in case of the British, over the Suez Canal. But there was more to it than just that. In the perspective of Robert Pierce, there was also a religious aspect to it, where the Russians wanted influence over the Orthodox community in the region, whereas the British and the French wanted influence over the Catholic people. So it was kind of like a fight for the keys of the church. Now, to tie it into the elements found in All Quiet on the Western Front. Firstly, the fact that there was something that could have been done apart from the violence. Now, in All Quiet on the Western Front, this happens when Paul first sees the Kaiser, and he starts to question his authority and realizes that this whole shenanigan wouldn't have happened had the Kaiser said no. The same is the case for the Crimean War, where Britain and France didn't have to get involved into the battle, but did. And because of this, a lot of the British military and navy didn't really feel like they belonged in the war, especially because of the fact that they were extremely underprepared for the battle. There's also the constant development of technology, which is highlighted in both of the wars. In All Quiet on the Western Front, this is mainly emphasized through the introduction of tanks, which start to obliterate the German army and are described by Paul Balmer as being inhumane and unjust. There's also the constant banging of artillery fire, as well as the development of bayonets into spades. Technology also played a pivotal role in the Crimean War, where, while Mahmud II did try to reform his military in 1821 by developing the Nizami troops, by 1853, Britain and France had already created percussion rifles as well as mini bullets, which had outdeveloped both the Ottomans as well as the Russians. There's also the fact that there is quite a big distinction between the quality of the troops. In All Quiet on the Western Front, this is really emphasized by the fact that Paul Balmer makes constant reference to the fact that a lot of the troops are unready because of the fact that the war was so immediate and that it wasn't expected to last as long as it did. This is the same case in the Crimean War, where a lot of the British troops were described by Robert Pierce as being amateur because of the fact that the military as well as the navy didn't have enough people because of the fact that they didn't know that the war was going to happen. As mentioned previously, the Ottoman soldiers were also this case as well. They didn't have the same technology, and they were also a lot less trained and subordinated than the British. This was also the case in the Crimean War, which was in fact the first war to have media coverage. And because of the fact that it was lessening the morale of the people, the government decided to censor it. And because of this, a lot of the public didn't know what to actually think of what was going on in the war. This was the case in 1855 with a poem, The Charge of the Light Brigade, which was only allowed to be published because of the fact that it was making such a bad incident look good. Medicine is also an issue in both of the conflicts. In All Quiet on the Western Front, this is really emphasized by the fact that a lot of the soldiers are taken to a death room because of the fact that there isn't enough medicine to handle all of the soldiers. In the Crimean War, this is the same. Because Britain was not prepared for the battle, there was barely any medicine, which was described to be sickening by the media. This would allow for 3 out of 5 soldiers to die from disease which could have been prevented.
It's really sad that he died. I don't know how to... Oh.